I recognize that that's a part of my life, that's a part of my truth, and I'm okay talking about it.
I love that you are using this platform to share about that and really be your authentic self. And that is like the connection piece, right? That we're talking about. Like your listeners love coming back to this podcast because they love how authentic you are and they love learning from you.
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision. Woo! Welcome everyone, welcome one, welcome all to your one-stop shop for everything empowerment. I am your host, Tariq Williams, and not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. So let's get right into it. And today on the podcast, on the Speak Your Vision podcast, we have an amazing guest with us today. And as soon as I met this individual, I was like, oh, I need to work with her. And not only that, I need to have her on the podcast. And so I want to give it up, everyone, and introduce you all today to Elisa Ann, podcast strategist. Thank you for being here today.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for having me. It is great to be here. And as you mentioned, you wanted to work with me. So cut to the chase here. We work together. But it's so great to actually like see you behind it and like hear your enthusiasm behind it. So this is really cool for me. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, no question. But I also thought like your story to how you got to where you are and this specific niche that you have and being a podcast strategist is so interesting to me. And I mean, who doesn't love podcasts, right? Obviously, if you're listening, you love podcasts. So you're going to get the opportunity to kind of peel back the curtain a little bit and understand some podcast strategy. So here you are, listeners. Um, but ultimately, language is really important here on the podcast, and it's something that we start every podcast episode with. So, Alyssa, I'll ask you, when you think of podcast, what is the one word that you think of and why?
Yeah, first of all, I love this question and I love that you do this because it's such a unique way, especially for me to think about podcasting in one word.
Yeah.
You'll soon to figure out, listeners, that I am a really great rambler and talker. So one word is hard for me, but I think that when I choose one word to think about podcasting, I think of connection. I
Mm,
think connection is just a really great way that I relate to podcasting because I, as a consumer of podcasts, love to feel connected to the host. If I feel connected to the host, I automatically have buy in with the host and I want to listen to them, binge their content, and I keep coming back. And ultimately, the connection is what does it for me for podcasting, why I love it so much.
you know, that is, I like that, because when I ask this question to my guest, I kind of get some thoughts and think about what they might say. And I'm typically surprised. And this is no different because when I think about the word connection, I'm immediately like, am I connected to my Wi Fi? Right. So if I feel disconnected from my Wi Fi, I'm lost. You know what I mean? But I think that's a neat word because ultimately you're listening to a podcast to get a connection, to gain some insight. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. I think connection is what makes podcasts relatable. And then
Mm,
I also think that I love to feel like I'm talking to my best friend or I'm a part of a conversation. If there's two hosts or one, it doesn't really matter. If you feel connected to the podcast host, to the topic, you're going to enjoy it and find a lot more, I don't know, more reason to come back to that specific podcast.
absolutely. So you heard it here first, listeners and viewers, that Alyssa and I will be your best friend for the next 40 minutes to an hour. I'm sure your best friend is great, whoever they are. Actually, well, we know that you're listening with your best friend, but we can also be your best friend for the duration of this
Absolutely.
podcast. All right. So now, when you're talking about that connection, I think you almost touched on what my next question is, but how did you develop your love for actually, let me step back. What made you even want to be a podcast strategist?
Ooh, this is a question. Okay, so buckle up because this is kind of a long story, but
All right, I'm buckling up.
I shocker, I didn't actually go out and start out to want to be a podcast strategist. I'm from a small town, so I have, you go to school, you go to college, you get the degree, you do the job, ta-da, that's life.
Yes.
So this is like a whole, like the not norm, right? Or the unnorm. I don't know the words, but it's
In
untypical.
Yeah, there you go. In norm, unnorm, non-typical. Yeah,
It's
for sure.
non-typical.
Atypical, atypical.
Atypical. There
There
you
you go. There
go.
you go.
That's it.
College, I studied English. Fun fact. So eventually we
Well,
got there together.
yeah. So I did the atypical route, but I went to school. I got 2 degrees, actually. I double majored in biochemistry and clinical laboratory science. I did the job, the career world. I was a medical technologist at a hospital for 4 years. And
Wow.
yeah, so I did the career life for a little bit. But then I also happened to be there during the pandemic. And as a
Mm,
lot of medical field personnel, I burned out. And it was just a changing moment for me that, like, maybe I don't see myself in this career forever. And it was crazy because from as long as I can remember, I always wanted to do something in the healthcare field, whether it was to be a doctor, a nurse. I initially went to college to be a researcher in medication to try to help cure diseases. I changed that. And then I went into clinical laboratory science. And while I still find everything about that degree interesting and that career, um, it just wasn't for me, you know? And the burning out during the pandemic, shout out to all those healthcare professionals that worked throughout the pandemic, whether you were forward facing, non-patient facing, whatever part and whatever role you played, shout out to you because you did the thing. It was tough.
mm-hmm,
I know. It sucked for lack of better words.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Um, so I think that it was a time that I struggled with mentally. And when I decided that it was maybe not the best fit for me anymore, I was looking for an exit plan. And I actually was listening to a podcast and they brought on a podcast manager. And I was like, whoa, that's so cool. Did not even think that this was a thing. I
right.
want to know more about it. So I went down like a deep dive and I learned as much as I could from podcasts and Google searches and all the things. And I found a podcasting course. So I went on a limb and I took the course and I actually fell in love with it. Like I thought it was really interesting. Um, Clinical laboratory science, medical technology, whatever you want to call it. It is a very like precision and accurate and detailed field.
Mm-hmm,
So the looking at editing for a podcast, looking at the waves, looking at the sound waves, the like little marks here, little marks there, um, the EQ, literally all of the things that are so detailed to edit a podcast was like so interesting to me. And I found it actually really fun. While it's super time consuming, it's really fun for me. So I really enjoyed that and I continue to move forward. Um, a side story is I also happened to get a dog in
okay.
2020.
Yeah.
And like one does, I started a dog Instagram account.
Okay.
And I met some people on there, which was really cool. But the reason why I bring this up is because one of my friends from the dog world was starting a podcast.
Mm,
And from the course that I took, she was like, start playing around with audio as much as you can to get practice with editing. And I didn't want to start a podcast of my own at the time or really even listen to myself talk, to be completely honest. So I reached out to that friend and I was like, hey, I know you're starting a podcast. I just took a course on podcast management and editing. Would I be able to use your audio for fun, just to play around with? And like, I'll sign something so I don't leak your audio. I won't, share it with anyone. I just want to use it to practice.
mm-hmm.
And she was like, you know what? If you want to edit my podcast for me, like, that's
Yeah.
great. I'll pay you for it. And I was like,
Done.
okay, guess we're doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And literally the rest is history.
Wow. That's awesome. That's awesome. You know, well, I was just listening to your journey. It kind of shows that, like, whenever you're going through some type of, I don't want to say stuck, but necessarily like some type of like situation in your life, that you have the ability to pivot in a way that makes you more comfortable and ultimately more happy, right? And find something that you can enjoy. And you were talking about it being from a small town and everything like that. Like, gosh, like, same thing for myself. And you're supposed to do the thing and do the thing and then do the job and all that. And ultimately, you get there, and it may not be exactly what you thought it was going to be, but recognize that that's okay.
Yeah, actually, I think that was the hardest part, was recognizing that it was okay. Because
Yeah.
you're still friends with people that are doing the
Mm,
career, the job, all the
yeah.
things. So, like, I'm still very much surrounded by that. And so to be the one that's doing a different path, um, it's almost like scary. Well, obviously it's scary, but it's also like insecure, I guess, feeling,
Mm,
because
mhm.
you don't want to be the one that looks different, I guess. You want to blend in.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like sometimes as individuals, though, we want to blend in, but we feel like blending in is what we're supposed to do. But ultimately, it's not what we have to do. All we do is just be who we are, be ourselves, and truly, if we blend in the meantime, that's fine. And if we don't, that's fine too. So moving forward, though, you mentioned your situation where you pivoted and now you're a influencer podcasting strategist. But now I want to look at it through a little bit of a different lens, because now you have your own business. And so ultimately that brings some stress as well. So, how do you manage and prioritize your mental health and trying to avoid burnout in this situation as a business owner?
Yeah, I love this question because um it's funny because I don't know the right answer, because I don't think there
Mm,
is a right answer. I'm still trying to figure it out, like, on the daily.
yeah.
Um but okay, I have another story. I promise it has a point, but we're going to take a little detour.
Please
So
listen. The listeners are cool with it. We're best friends now.
yes, that's right, bestie. All
That's
right. So buckle up. No, we already buckled up. We're already
That's true.
buckled up.
That's true. I didn't click.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay.
Here we go. We're going back up the roller coaster.
Yeah, that's
Um
it.
so I mean, it's funny because I think that burnout is such a real thing, right? It really is, and I learned this the hard way. Um Back in March of 2020, before the world shut down, the hospital that I was currently working at was also going through like a management reorganization. So honestly, we were kind of frantic. We were losing people left and right, whether it was due to retirement, reorganization, resignation, whatever it may be. With the reorganization, people were moving up. So we needed someone else to fill that new position. People were leaving, whatever. Um, and during that time, we were short staffed. I mean, along with so many other careers in the medical world, in any world really, um, every field has its time of being short staffed. And I know that before the pandemic happened, the hospital that I was working in was experiencing this. Then, the pandemic happens and you become even more short staffed and all the things. But that's beside the point. To continue the story, it's funny because one of my friends at the hospital was also pregnant at the time, and she was getting ready to leave for her maternity leave.
Okay.
So, we're losing people from resignation, retirement, and reorganization, and now we're losing someone else to a maternity leave.
Yeah.
It happens. We're not going to say you can't go, right? You got to go
You're not
home.
allowed.
Yeah, we're not gonna do that. So she's getting ready to go, and we were just chatting one day, kind of talking about all the chaos, what's going on and stuff. And she called it. She was like, if we don't start getting some people here soon, everybody's gonna end up being burnt out by the end of the summer.
Hmm.
And little did she know that the world was shutting down like 2 weeks later, and we were even going to be in more of distress and all the other external factors.
Mm-hmm.
But she was like, based off of how everyone's working right now, trying to fill spots, XYZ, everyone's going to be burnt out by the end of the summer. And this is where it's funny because I literally laughed. Like, I was like, maybe everybody else, but not me. Like, I'm
Right.
fine. I'm good
Right.
under pressure. I know what I'm doing. It's going to be fine. Everything is fine, you know? Um, everything was not fine.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but she was right. I did end up burning out. I did make it through the summer on, the plus side, but
Mm-hmm.
by the end of the summer, it took a toll on everybody. I saw positive attitudes go negative. People who came to work all the time and was like always positive, never really had anything negative to say or complain about, started complaining, including myself. We were all feeling the stress of the pandemic, all the new SOPs that were changing all the time. What we had to do to keep ourselves safe in this pandemic, because obviously the hospital doesn't shut down. Like, you still have to go to work. How we were going to keep ourselves safe, like what what about our families, all the things. So
Yeah.
everything took a toll on all of the healthcare workers that I worked with, including myself, and I'm sure everywhere else. So that added to my stressors. And then as a people pleaser myself, I've always kind of been that people pleaser. I always was like, well, if I don't get my job done, it's going to make it harder on the next person if I don't get everything I need to get
Yeah.
done before I leave. And then it's going to make it hard on the next person. And then that person's going to complain and have a rough day and blah,
Yep.
blah, blah.
Yep.
So I stayed late. I would stay 2 hours, 3 hours past my shift. It was crazy some days. But I promise the story has a point.
Yeah.
So basically, this all happened. I burned out. And then, like, 2 months later, it took me like 2 months for me to even realize what burnout was and that I was going through it. I didn't like, people would tell me like, I think you're burnt out. And I would literally just be like, no, I'm just helping. Like, I want to stay late to help. I want to, I want to make it better for the next person. But they were right. It was the process of burning out. And that's where it comes back to, like, I don't think that I thought I was immune to burnout. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that at all. I don't think I was above it, but I think that I didn't understand the realness of it. I
Mm.
don't think I knew how real burnout really was.
Right.
So I think that is something that I'm still trying to figure out to try to prevent that. All I know is that feeling that I had, and trying to do what I can now in my own business to prevent that
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
So I mean, on a daily, I kind of, take walks. I take more time in the mornings. I have slow mornings.
Okay.
I've been reading more. I try to take time off of screens, but like, as far as like, what are you do? What's the magic secret sauce that you're doing to prevent burnout?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an answer for that.
Got it. Got it. And I don't necessarily know if I have a secret sauce either. If I'm being honest, and I can't help but whenever I think of the phrase secret sauce, I can't help but to think about the Krabby Patty secret formula. Um,
Exactly.
but besides the point, nevertheless, when I listen to you talk about podcasting, I'm like, oh, she loves this. Like, like I hear the excitement and the enthusiasm, and like checking out your Instagram and everything like that, and just the amount of energy and like enjoyment, if that's even a word. I think, yeah, enjoyment's a word. The amount of enjoyment that you're having when you do it, I think, is super important. So I would say that's a part of the equation, to try to limit
Definitely.
it, So I, I guess when it comes to, being in the healthcare field and everything like that, do you ever have conversations with your friends in that field? And do you guys talk about like where you're at now and the feelings that you're having? Are you happy that you left? Like do you have those types of conversations?
Truthfully, I only keep consistent connection with one of my old coworkers. I've
Hmm.
met up with my like other coworkers too since I've been gone.
Hmm.
But like I talk to one of them a lot more frequently, I guess.
Hmm.
And yeah, sometimes we talk about it, but for the most part, it's like you kind of know when you were that person that's like, I don't fit, or like not that you don't fit, but like that you need something else. You kind of know when you hit that piece when they will bring something up that used to bother you and it doesn't bother you anymore.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
I like talking to them about what's going on at the hospital just to stay in touch with like who's still there, and how are they doing, things like that. I know I will say that things have gotten a lot better now that we are 3 years past the pandemic.
Wow.
Which is crazy to say even.
Yeah.
But I think that everything that they're doing at the hospital is great and I support them and I wish the best for every single one of my old coworkers and the hospital. I have no hard feelings against the hospital. It is just wasn't for me and I learned that and it's okay. It's okay that it wasn't for me and it's okay that I walked away from it.
This is okay. That is okay. Everything is okay.
Absolutely. See, everything's fine. See, everything's fine. You can stay in the healthcare field and I commend you for it. I respect you for it. You can also leave the healthcare field and I commend you for it and I respect you for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you taking the initiative to pivot, figure out what works for you, because so often people will stay in situations where they're not happy for,
It's hard. It's hard to leave.
yeah, yeah. And so was this like, but I get at some point you recognize that you just had to do it.
I think the turning point was when I didn't recognize who I was being anymore.
Oh, wow. Hmm.
That was when I was like, I need to go. This isn't for me. I've become this negative form of myself, this disassociated form of myself. I literally come home, go to sleep, I wake up and I go to work. Like that kind of repetition, that's not me. I didn't have time to spend with anyone else outside of work really. Well, granted that nobody was doing anything outside of work, but even after once things started opening up again,
Hmm.
um I started not knowing who I was anymore, and I think that that's when I realized that it wasn't for me anymore.
100%. And you had to leave.
Mhm.
Yeah. Wow. I admire your action, your steps to move forward, and you saying, "Hey, this isn't for me. I'm gonna make action to get out of this." And so when we talk about though, getting back to the podcasting piece of it all, um, I'm assuming when this whole burnout is happening and you're recognizing that you're not too sure who you are anymore, I'm thinking that you're listening to podcasts while this is happening. Is that right?
Truthfully, I
Mhm.
don't recall. A
Okay.
lot of that time I kind of blacked out. I feel like
Wow. Okay.
like my mind, if I think back to like some of the hardest part of what I was going through it,
Hmm.
um, I think that I took most of the time in silence. Like I remember driving home or driving to work and just like not having the radio on, not listening to podcasts, just I needed silence.
Wow. Wow.
But other than that, I truthfully can't tell you. I kind of all of it kind of just blends together now.
And once again, you recognize that you didn't know who you were anymore.
Hmm.
So then taking those steps though, I guess then how did you start trend like what made you start listening to podcasts and getting into that just in general then?
Yeah, I mean, even this was before the pandemic when I started listening
Okay.
to podcasts. I've been a long time podcast listener.
Okay.
But I think what always drew me to podcasts was the continuing learning.
Mm.
I love continuing education. I think that podcast is one of the best ways to get continuing education. You can always learn something from a podcast. I feel like there's always something you can take away from an episode. Even like on an episode that you're listening to for purely entertainment, um, you can always walk away with something. I feel like whether it's like, knowledge of pop culture or knowledge of how to start a business or knowledge of, self help, it doesn't matter. There's always something you can learn.
Yeah, absolutely. So for those who at the beginning of class here, did not pull out their notebooks, pull out your notebook and let's all learn together. I'm learning a lot from you already, Alyssa. So that this has been great so far. So
Likewise.
you've been talking about that lifelong learning piece that continue to learn through podcasts. Would you say that's how you developed your love for podcasting then, and how why you started to enjoy it so much?
Yeah, I think they go hand in hand. I initially started listening to podcasts because I wanted to learn from them. And then, it goes back to the word that we talked about at the beginning, connection.
Connection.
Because I felt connected to the hosts. And then I wanted to keep learning from them. I built that connection. And then, the cycle just goes over and over again.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that the initial learning of podcasting or from podcasting is just been the reason that I find interest in it, but it doesn't mean that everybody finds interest in that way, right? Like there's plenty of other ways that people listen, or there's plenty of other things that people can get out of podcasting.
Right, right. When you talk about the connections though that you get with the people listening to podcasts and everything like that. I think that's so true. And that's why I do my best to even, once again, if I have an opportunity to tell a story about something that I've gone through, I want to share that with the listeners, show my authentic, vulnerable self, and that's why
Mhm.
I'll come on here and talk about my blindness. And obviously, being blind isn't, there's probably not a ton of blind people in the world, but like, I recognize that that's a part of my life, that's a part of my truth, and I'm okay talking about it because I want to help educate other people about blind people, and maybe someone else needs to listen to this. Um,
Absolutely. I love that you are using this platform to share about that and really be your authentic self. And
Mhm.
that is like the connection piece, right? That we're talking about. Like your listeners love coming back to this podcast because they love how authentic you are and they love learning from you and they learn words and they love hearing from you and your stories and all the things in this way.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I can't help but to think like when I was becoming blind and when I was 16, it was like I had never met like the first blind person I ever met was myself. You know what I mean? So it's funny now, but I'm just like, wow, like maybe my learning curve could have been a bit better if I had listened to a podcast about someone else going through adversity or someone else going through something or another blind person, who knows, right? And I think that's just the avenue that podcasting has created, and it truly has an unlimited amount of potential.
Absolutely.
But you know, when it comes to building those connections and making those connections with the host and to what you're listening to, you start relating it back to yourself. You know, when you're having conversations with people about podcasts, are there any common misconceptions that pop up about podcasting and what it is?
Yeah, for sure. Um, you know, I actually think of 2. Okay. So
Okay.
we have like from the perspective of just a consumer. I hear a lot of times that like podcasts, people don't listen to podcasts because they think that it's one-sided and they don't want to be talked at for an hour,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
But the thing is, in this example here, because we all are besties,
That's
friends,
it. That's it.
this is a conversation for all of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's learning and there's tips and there's tricks and stories and all these different things that are out there. There's entertainment podcasts, there's pop culture podcasts, there's TV show like well that's part of pop culture. But I mean
Mhm,
like literally there's a podcast out there for everyone. I am confident that there's something out there for you. Um
mhm,
but I think the other misconception from the like podcaster or aspiring podcaster side is that it's an expensive, overdone industry. And
interesting.
I think that that is because a lot of aspiring podcasters are afraid to put their voice out there because they think it's already,
Too
7 other
late.
people do it. Yeah, like there's
Yeah.
so many other people out there. There's so many other podcasts out there that want to talk about what they talk about. And so they think, why me? Why am I special? Why should I do it? But really, there's room for everybody. It is not a oversaturated field. I mean, podcasting can be expensive to if you want it to be. I mean, there's a reason it's like a $28 or $28 billion industry. But it doesn't have to be. Podcasting can be very simple from the start. All you really need is a microphone, some headphones, a recording platform, and you're good to go. It doesn't have to be expensive. So
When I started, I was just doing everything on my phone.
yeah,
I got the ring light. I put my phone in the tripod and bloop bloop, hit record,
yeah,
and that was it. The main piece, though, I think that's important for people to recognize is what you're saying is that your perspective is truly only your perspective, right?
absolutely.
Nobody else has that. And so don't be discouraged to say about, oh, like this person's talking about it. Sure, that person's talking about it, but they don't have your lived experience. And so your lived experience is special. Your lived experience is great. No one can ever take that away from you.
Yes.
So hit record.
Yeah, hit record.
And it's not going to be perfect at first, right? It's not going to be perfect at first. It's always neat to listen to some of my old videos and everything like that and looking like, wow, like this is cool. I'm happy with that, but I'm not there anymore.
No, but that's the beautiful thing about podcasting is that you can take it with you and grow. You don't have to, have XYZ set before you press record. There's literally people that take their phone with them, like put on voice memos, go for a 5-minute walk, or well, probably longer than 5 minutes, but they go for a walk or talking right into their phone and then, upload it and you're called good.
Yeah, absolutely. It truly is whatever you want it to be. And it's your authentic, it's your unique voice, and put it out there for the world. So when we're talking about launching a podcast and everything, I guess let's talk a little bit about your programs and what you offer as an influencer podcast strategist.
Yeah. So, my title is Influencer Podcast Strategist, but I work with mission-driven content creators and coaches. Mostly I help them launch their podcasts. I help them with their podcast management, and I have a service called Pitch Your Passion, which is the service that Tariq uses. And we work together to get people on, or to get you on podcasts. And the fun thing about Pitch Your Passion is that you don't even have to be a podcast host currently. You can be just someone that wants to share your mission through the podcasting platforms by being a guest. And that's like a new passion project of mine. While I love helping launch podcasts and I love helping with podcast management, Pitch Your Passion is a new way for me to like help more people get their mission out there to the world and help them kind of build that confidence. It's a great way for you to get your feet wet if you want to start a podcast someday, but you're not quite ready yet, because it gets you to use, the podcasting industry and get a little taste of what it's like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why podcasting is so important to me to get started and get my brand out there, because ultimately I created my brand and created my coaching programs because I want to extend my reach. I am extending my reach. There's someone out there who needs to hear this. There's someone out there that needs someone in their corner, accountability partner, a framework to move forward in their lives, to problem solve whatever it is they have going on. And so here we are. Here I am, your best friends. And so
We're all besties.
we're all besties here. And so I think that's really important. And I love the way that you talk about it on your social medias when you say, like, everyone has a voice. And I love this one, and maybe I'll pop it up on the screen, but it was like transforming the thought process to like me on a podcast to me on a podcast. I loved that, because then you start tapping into, people start realizing that they could hit whatever their potential actually is, and realizing that they don't even know what the possibilities are and what they can actually do.
Definitely. I am a firm believer in that everyone has something valuable to say.
Hmm.
Um, your mission matters and it's meant to be shared with the world.
Hmm. And when you and I talk, and how I present myself as a podcast host, I like to think of myself as a mirror holder. The person that I have on is great, you know what I mean, and I want everyone listening to recognize how great my guest is. And so, once again, Elisa, you're great, and I'm happy that you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed being able to talk to all your listeners. And now I have so many new best friends.
You have so many best friends, but hold on, the best friends are listening, and they know you're amazing, just like I do, right? And they're listening, and they're like, oh wow, as they're listening, they've already gone to your Instagram, and they're checking out, like, how do I get on a podcast? And they're scrolling through, and they're like, "Ah, you know this picture passion thing is cool and all, but I'm just not cool enough for this." How do you respond to those people?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So first of all, you are cool. I think you're awesome. And second of all, I definitely recommend you to go scroll through my Instagram and find that reel that you were talking about, because I truly mean every word of that reel. And basically, I'll just reiterate it here. You do have something special to share, whether it be lived experiences, tips and tricks, something specific you learned about your field or industry that you're in that can help somebody else in the future, or, someone else in the current. Something that you experienced in the past, someone else very well might be going through right now. And they can learn from what you like from your experience and make it better for them, or just have that feeling that someone else went through what they went through. So you definitely are cool enough to be a guest on a podcast. Let's figure it out. I can help you come up with your topic and figure out your direction on how to even find a podcast to be on.
you know, you just made me think of something. When I first started becoming blind, I was at this place where I didn't really know who I was anymore, right? And I didn't necessarily know what to turn, or how to turn, or who to turn to. I wasn't sure who I was, because my identity has completely changed from someone who could see just like anyone else and could no longer, right?
Mhm.
But one of the things that really helped me out was that, and this is a joke. Everyone, don't take this too seriously, but kind of take it seriously. Uh, but I joke and say that, my friends and we all made fun of each other before I lost my vision, and we all made fun of each other and joked around after I lost my vision, right? And so something like that actually had me recognize that my identity didn't change. And not only did my identity not change, it had worth just like everyone else's.
Preach. That was beautiful.
So and bro, I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie to our best friends here, Alyssa. All right, it was a journey. By
Yeah.
It was a journey, and you wouldn't lie to our best friends and say that your burnout in the healthcare field wasn't a journey either, right?
Oh man, it's still a journey.
Exactly. Exactly. But I think having the courage and understanding that you can talk about it, I think is so important, because there's someone listening, or someone has a friend who's listening that needs to hear it and will share it with them. And then from there, it's like, oh, okay. It's okay. It's fine. Everything is fine and okay.
Everything is fine.
It's
I
great.
couldn't agree more. I think that, um, out of if you take one thing away from my story is that no matter what field you're in, if you're not feeling aligned, if you're not recognizing yourself, if you're not feeling the most fulfilled in that field that you're doing, in that job, it's okay to take a different route. It's okay to explore other options. It's okay to leave. But it's also okay to love it. And if you love it and you want to stay there, that's great too. We appreciate everything. We appreciate all sides. Um, but I do want to encourage you that if you're not happy with what you're doing, it's okay to leave and find something else.
Mhm. And not only that, it might be scary. It might be a little bit jumping off out on a limb, but once again, you mentioned it before, Alyssa, that you podcasts are a great place for you to listen and learn,
Mhm.
right? And learning something new is sometimes a little bit nerve-wracking, but it is something that you can definitely do for sure.
Absolutely.
And so when we're talking about learning something new and we're talking about developing as an individual and putting your podcast out there and your perspectives out there, if you could give us one word about, where you see the future of podcasts going, what would that be?
Hmm. This is a great question. If I had one word to describe where I think the future of podcasting is going, hmm, you know, I think that the podcast industry is just going to continue to grow. Um, and so I truly believe that my one word would have to be, this sounds so cheesy because it's what I started with,
I love
but
pizza. It's fine.
me too. Um, I really do think that the connection word is still
Mm,
running true because I think it's only going to continue to grow. More and more people are having guests on their podcast, building that collaboration. Maybe actually the word is collaboration. That might
okay.
be the word that I think because more and more people are finding that, yes, solo episodes are great. They're a great way to connect with your audience, continue to build that relationship with them. But by having guests on and by being a guest on other podcasts, you're building that connection with more and more people. You're collaborating with other like minded individuals, introducing them to new audiences. And honestly, I think collaboration is probably my word that I'm going to stick with.
I think that's important. I think that's great because the more you collaborate with others, the more that you get to learn and ultimately make some awesome connections.
Yeah. Also, I mean, complete side point of it, but
Yeah.
collaboration also in terms of monetization. I mean,
Yes.
the podcast industry is growing. Like I said, it was like $28 billion industry in 2023. It's
Wow.
projected to be a $30 billion industry in 2024.
Wow.
So like I said, it's just growing and advertisers are noticing that. They're looking for influencers, content creators, coaches
Yeah.
to collaborate with and, monetize the show. So it's a great industry to be in. It's a great time to start a podcast. It's a great time to be a podcaster.
The code to the Wi-Fi is definitely podcast. I feel like, can I get the code to the Wi-Fi? Like making those connections, I think is so important. And you talk about collaborations, you talk about monetarily. I can't help but to think about when you were talking about the how much of $1 billion industry it is. I was like, gosh, maybe I should have thought of podcast first so I could talk about it on Shark Tank. Um,
We
but
love a good Shark Tank.
we love a good Shark Tank. Oh gosh, I'm gonna go binge watch after this. I and I would say this. Like I love watching Shark Tank because I see it's great to hear and see those stories and recognize the
I knew you
potential
were going to say that.
and recognize the potential of what they are doing, but not only what they're doing, but Alyssa, what you and I are doing, and ultimately what our best friends are doing while they're listening.
Absolutely. Snaps to that.
All right. Oh gosh, Alyssa, I think this was fantastic. It was great talking with you and hearing about your story, about your journey, recognizing that it's fine, that it's okay, everything's cool. You are cool enough to have your own podcast and be a guest on someone else's. And I guess Alyssa, any final words at all about your brand, about your programs, about what you're doing?
Yeah, well, I just want to say thank you again for having me. It's
Yeah.
been a joy being able to speak about my journey, and what better place to talk about my mental journey of starting my own business from the healthcare field with a mental or with a mindset coach,
That's it.
because you get it. Like
Yeah.
you get the steps that I went through, and it's just been freeing to be able to talk about it. And so I just thank you for allowing me to share on this platform. For my new besties out there, I think that the word fulfilling should be something
Ooh.
that you put in every aspect of your life. If you feel fulfilled in what you're doing right now, that's amazing. If you're not feeling fulfilled in it, that's okay. Find somewhere else to follow whatever is going to make you feel fulfilled. That is something that I learned that, well, I learned you can't pour from an empty cup. And I
Yes, come
think,
on now.
yeah, and I think that now I can say I am truly fulfilled and I am like really enjoying what I'm doing. So you can't pour from an empty cup. So go find something that fills your cup up just as much as like you fill other people's cups up. So I wanted to say that. And if you are interested in pitching yourself to other podcasts because you're ready to, start sharing your mission, start sharing
Mhm.
your story. I'm going to leave Tariq with a freebie that you guys can download. It's going to be how to be a guest in 3 easy steps. And I think he'll probably link it in the show notes for you.
Show notes, description, everywhere you get your We Are Vision of Hope content. And
Amazing.
as for me, I feel just by doing this podcast, I feel fulfilled. And this has been hopefully a freeing experience for not only you, Alyssa, but once again, all of our best friends that we just received. And
Absolutely.
and when it comes to making those steps and everything like that, and in terms of moving forward, well, as Alyssa has you so eloquently stated, I myself being your mindset coach, your problem solving coach, and your new best friend, Tariq Williams, we just look forward to everyone continuing to grow each and every day in whatever it is you're doing. So we are visionofhope.com for coaching. And thank you all so much for listening today. It was truly an honor to have you on, Alyssa. And I can't wait to work with you more in the future.
Yeah, I'm excited. Bye, besties.
Have a good one, everyone. Thank you. When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.